Hi, mathematicians. An integer is the math term that we use for a couple of different types of numbers. First of all, any whole number. So another word for whole number would be like typically the ones that you use to count plus 0. So like 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so on. So any whole number, but integers can also be the opposite of whole numbers. So for example, there's no opposite of 0, but there is like a -1, -2, -3, and so on and so forth. So if we look in our activity that we have here, where it asks us to place a check mark next to each integer, a lot of people would be tempted to pick this one, -2.5, but 2.5 isn't a whole number because it's halfway in between -2 and -3. So even though it's got a negative in front of it, it's actually not an integer. Same thing, since this one is a fraction, that one is also not an integer. So that leaves the ones that we need to check, which are 5, 7, -12, and 0. In our next problem, it's asking us to find which number line is correctly numbered. And so the first thing we need to know is that a number line always has 0 right in the middle. Sometimes when we talk on a number line, or when we talk on a coordinate plane, we call that middle point. We also call it the origin. Sometimes, like where they say, where are you originally from? The origin is kind of like the center point, kind of what grounds you right there. So that means that C is not a correct number line because it doesn't actually have a 0 graphed on that number line. So it's down between option A and option B. And you'll note, so the way that a number line works is that when you move in the positive direction, your numbers are going up, increasing by positive numbers. So for example, 1, then 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. But on the left-hand side, it also goes up from 0 in that same order. So what I mean by that is the first number to the left of 0 is a negative number, but it should be a -1. So notice in A, it goes -4. And that's a mistake a lot of people make when they're numbering a number line. They think it's going to kind of go in order from left to right the same way it does on the positive side, and it does not. So you go 0, -1, -2, -3, and so on and so forth. So that means that we need to choose option B. And even though there's a lot more numbers on a number line, that's the reason that these arrows are technically here. And I know my arrows are so messy, but the reason those are there is to let you know that the number line technically goes on and on and on in both directions forever. Okay, in the next problem, it's asking us to find which number line has opposites that are graphed. So opposites, as we said when we talked about the definition of an integer, examples of opposites would be like 2 and -2, 5 and -5, for example. So if I look at option A, you see that I have a dot, I have a coordinate right above the -3 and the +3. So A has a couple of opposites that are graphed on that number line. Whereas on option B, we've got a -5, but there's no +5 graphed there to represent that. So there's not an opposite there. And here we have +2 graphed, but not a -2. So option B doesn't have any opposites that are graphed. On option C, I've got -4 and +4 graphed, so option C does have opposites that are graphed. And then finally for option D, I've got a +5, but no -5. I've got a +2, but no -2, -4 with no +4. So there's no opposites graphed on that one either. So we just need to put a check mark next to options A and C. Okay, last but not least, it asks us to fill in the blank with a greater than or a less than symbol. I'm going to rewrite it kind of over here to make it a little bit easier to see. So on the number line, you'll notice that, so here's 0, right? So -5 is right here. -9 you might think is bigger, but -9 is actually more negative than -5. So for example, think about a temperature. If it's -9, it's a lot colder than -5. Well, not a lot colder, but it's colder than -5 degrees. Same thing, like if you owe somebody $9 and you owe somebody else $5, which one's more broke? If you owe somebody -9, right? So we're going to fill in the blank. That means that -9 is less than -5.